and it will be available after the meeting and will include a summary. So if you look over to the right, you should see a Slido. So please to vote and send that in. Why don't we get started with the agenda for today's meeting? First, we'll have a kickoff with Kirk Kudelka, our Assistant Commissioner, and then we'll move into an overview of this work, talk a little bit about history, the compliance and enforcement, our strategic priorities. We'll do a panel and then end with a Q&A. And so with that, I will turn the screen over to Kirk Kudelka to get us all started today.
Thanks, Andrea, and welcome everyone. Really appreciate everyone being here today, but not only thanking you for today and your involvement, but just over the years. You know, there's a lot of great work being done by various entities, whether it's nonprofits, public entities, private entities, as we're looking at mercury and skin cream. And just want to thank you for all the work you've done so far and the work that I know you'll be continuing to do into the future. Today, we are brought together in large part because of some action last legislative session. What had happened is the legislature provided additional resources to the MPCA to focus on education, product sampling, compliance and enforcement, all as it relates to businesses as we deal with mercury and skin cream. And this was done through the leadership of folks like Senator Pappas and Amira from Beautywell. And so really thank them for their efforts and leadership in this area. As we build out our work in this spot, we are interested in your thoughts and your feedback. We know the work crosses many different areas. None of this is siloed into one certain area, but if folks may be working with community, they have impacts, relations with business. If they may be working with a local health department, they may have interactions in other places. And so we want to learn from you and collect your feedback on your perspectives as we are looking to enhance our efforts as it relates to businesses, as mentioned before, focusing on education, product sampling, and our compliance and enforcement pieces. So today, we're going to be providing some background and perspective on our work, for instance, on product sampling, some of our compliance and enforcement efforts in the past as it relates to businesses. And this is going to be an annual experience to show what MPCA has been doing, but also to collect your feedback as we look to build out for this first time a more robust plan on how we would use the new staff that will be dedicated to this. And also, as we continue in the future, how do we adjust it? How do we get your feedback? What are you seeing on the ground as we are doing our efforts, and how we can make our plan better and have even more great impacts? So with that, again, thank you, everyone, and I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea.
Thank you, Kirk. And so we're going to now transition over to Michael Zhang, and he's our environmental specialist with the Resource Management and Assistant Division. And so he's going to give us our overview that will lead into more conversation. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. If I could get the next slide, please. Yeah, here we have some examples of skin-lightening products found to have mercury here in Minnesota. Some may look very professional and legitimate, but still contain harmful ingredients such as mercury. Inorganic mercury, which is man-made in a lab, is often used and it's very inexpensive and is effective in lightening skin. Labels are often incomplete, inaccurate, or in a different language, so it can be difficult for both consumers and businesses to know that it's safe. Next slide, please. These products enter Minnesota in many different ways. They can be found in ethnic markets, specialty shops, online retailers, overseas travels, and community sharing. Many businesses unknowingly stock products that contain mercury or other harmful chemicals. We know that most businesses want to protect their customers, They simply just haven't been given clear information. That's why this meeting and in today's conversation is very important. Next slide, please. Mercury exposures from these products affect the kidneys, causes skin issues, nervous systems, and mental health issues such as anxiety, memory loss, depression, and fatigue. And mercury isn't the only chemical of concern in these products. Because health effects often develop slowly, people may not realize the cause. Providing education and awareness is key to preventing them. So, next slide, please. When someone applies a mercury-containing cream, the mercury evaporates. The vapor spreads throughout the room and can settle on bedding, clothing, and furniture. Even if one person uses a product, everyone in the home can be exposed. The issue is more than just a personal choice. It's a household exposure risk. Next slide, please. Mercury is especially dangerous because you can't smell it. It's odorless and it's tasteless. When these products are opened or applied, mercury vapor is released into the air and inhaled by users and their families. Exposures also occur through contaminated hands while cooking, breastfeeding, or touching everyday items like clothes, towels, or doorknobs. But most of all, exposure from physical contact. Next slide, please. This issue matters deeply because harm doesn't stay with just one person. Mercury evaporates and exposes entire households, especially children and pregnant women, who are most vulnerable. Many businesses care about their customers, and communities want and deserve safe products. This is about collective responsibilities and protecting families. Next slide, please. No single agency can address this issue alone. We have an interagency team comprising of Minnesota Department of Health, who focuses on health effects, the Minnesota Department of Commerce, who addresses consumer protection in other product areas, but does not regulate mercury in skin lightening product. That authority regulation falls to MPCA, who also focuses on environmental contamination and product safety. By working together, we provide consistent information and better support communities. Next slide, please. Here at the MPCA, we've purchased more than 500 products and have screened them. And of those screened, more than 300 products have tested positive for mercury, sometimes at extremely high levels. Labels are often misleading or incomplete, which puts consumers and businesses in a difficult position. Sharing testing results can help businesses and consumers make safer choices. All businesses want to do the right thing, but aren't given clear guidance. Many products come with red flags, which includes missing ingredient lists, incomplete ingredients, extreme claims, no manufacturing listed, low prices, and non-English labeling. MPCA can help vendors quickly identify products that may contain mercury with instruments that we currently possess. We're here to support businesses with information. These products should also never be thrown away in the trash or poured down the drain. They are hazardous waste. Residents and businesses should bring unsafe products to their local hazardous waste sites. If anyone needs help figuring out where to take a product, they can contact the MPCA. Voluntarily disposal protects employees, customers, and families. With that, I've concluded my part of the presentation, and I'll hand this back to Andrea. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about the history, but before we do that, we have another poll. And so you'll see Slido coming again as we look at ways to communicate with you in 2026. We'd really like to hear what are some of the best ways for the MPCA to provide you with updates throughout the year. And while I think all of these are solid answers, we'd just like to see you rank your number one option. And with that, we'll move over to John Gilkison to talk about the history of the work we're doing with mercury and skin lightening products. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, I have a little time lag on turning my video on and off there, so I wasn't sure what was actually happening. So I'm going to talk about the history of regulation and activities on mercury-containing skin lightening products and cosmetics in Minnesota. Kind of catch you up on what we have been doing, and that can set some direction for the future. Can you go to the next slide, please? So Minnesota was the first state to ban the sale of mercury-containing cosmetics. This was in a 2007 law enacted in 2007 that was comprehensive product sales phase out for mercury products. And we addressed this because we knew that these products were being made and used overseas. We had never seen them in Minnesota at the time, but we figured that they would be here sooner or later. The term containing mercury means intentionally added, and the FDA has set a limit for cosmetics in federal rule of 1 part per million, and that is the threshold that we have used. And typically, you're not going to see intentional addition for skin lightening below maybe 500 ppm. And we're seeing 3,000 ppm and up typically. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a timeline here on our activities since 2008, when the ban took effect. In 2010, 2011, Ramsey County Public Health and Refugee Program staff contacted us and asked if we could screen products for mercury. And we said, yes, we can do that with the instrumentation that we have. And one of those Ramsey County staffers was Amira Adawe, who we'll hear from later today. And I have to say that we were all pretty shocked when we opened those containers and screened them with the Lumex rather, and the meter instantly was pegged at the vapor limit of 50,000 nanograms per meter cubed. And so then we knew we had a really serious problem here in Minnesota that we had to address. In 2011, we did some background research and we identified about 10 businesses to execute search warrants and screen products. And we found a number of products, including some that were labeled. And enforcement actions were taken in these cases. And Regina might go into a little bit more detail about some of the terms that are used, but we did have a range of actions. Generally, businesses are given a chance to take the right action, and some of these did, and some of these we had to go further with that. And then in the 2013 to 2018 timeframe, in 2013 and 2018, there were two what we call search and seizure events at ethnic malls in the Twin Cities, and these were precipitated by illegal drug sales, but in the process of doing these, a great number of mercury-containing cosmetics were found. And the outcome of these two events were outreach and education events for the vendors to educate them about the products. And in 2016, the MPCA and Ramsey County sponsored a joint collection event for vendors and communities to bring in their products and have them properly managed. Another outcome of these two events is that the mall managers included lease terms covering sale of legal and illegal products, requiring their vendors to sell only products that are legal to sell in the U.S., and also offering some education that also provided some liability protection for the mall managers that they were doing their due diligence. And I believe both malls also have obtained small business hazardous waste licenses, so that if a vendor has material that has to be managed, they can manage it through through their landlord, the mall owner, and ensure that they're disposed improperly. And as a result of all this action, which is really multi-jurisdictional and kind of multiple interests, we formed a mercury and skin lightening products multi-agency work group, which included Food and Drug Administration, State Pharmacy Board, and law enforcement at the county and city level, and public health agencies, Department of Health, the landlords of the malls, because this is such a complex issue, and legally, from the drug perspective, drug and food and drug enforcement perspective, and from environment and community health. Next slide, please. So in 2019, we had new staff at both Pollution Control Agency and Department of Health who were focusing on this, and they developed new community outreach programs and multilingual educational materials for the different communities in Minnesota that might be affected by, or where their community members may be selling these products. And we had a very intense effort to be out in the community, working directly with the communities at public events and so forth in 2019. Unfortunately, COVID brought that to a halt in 2020. All of those events stopped. The malls closed. The whole climate changed. And so at the agency, we shifted our focus to online sales. And we did a lot of research across various platforms and sellers, and purchased quite a few products, and worked with a number of those entities to inform them of Minnesota law and help them identify and remove those products from sale. And then again, we as things opened up, we started looking at retail sales again, starting in 2022, 2023. And throughout this time, we screened, purchased, and tested products to build information on the dangerous products. Another thing we did in 2023, 2024 was we started collaborating with states and local health departments that are doing this and have laws in place, California and New York City in particular. There's also some international NGOs who are working on this issue and trying to educate people globally and work with governments to curtail the trade. And we got a letter out of the Environmental Commissioners of States organization, which is the National Association of Environmental Agency Commissioners, to express state support for resolutions that were offered at the Minamata Convention Conference of the Parties in 2023 to take a stronger stance on these products and really get people's attention on the need to shut down the manufacturing and the international trade. And another thing that we've been doing throughout this time is we do home visits, and those are usually precipitated by a medical situation where someone's been, a person is found with a high mercury level. And then with Department of Health and Minnesota Poison Control, we do home visits to collect urine samples, test the home for contamination, and screen any products that they may have. And we do several of those a year. And I think we'll go to the next. One other thing we did in 2024 was we met with federal agencies to educate them about the problem and recruit their assistance in curtailing imports and trade within the U.S. And then we have in 2025, the law that was enacted. So a couple other slides here. These are a couple pictures from the business and community collection event in 2016, and this illustrates the quantities that the small businesses may have that they may need to get rid of, and just the quantity that are available for sale. And the second picture on the right is just a sampling of different products that were brought in probably by a community member. Next slide, please. And then finally, we had a case in Minnesota that got into the international press, and you can, on the QR code here, you can scan that and get a link to the article. CNN did a very powerful multi-part series called White Lies about the beauty industry and the skin lightening industry and the social and economic factors that lead to the pressures for skin lightening and skin lightening products. Strongly recommend that everyone read that. And there was a case in Minnesota that was one of the stories. There was a report to Minnesota Poison Control of someone with an elevated level of mercury in their urine. We did a home visit and found a couple of products, not really any elevated levels in the home. And then this was through poison control. Then they got another report from the physician, and we did a second home visit. The person continued to have symptoms of poisoning. And on that second visit, we found additional products. We found levels of contamination in the home, including in the children's bedroom. And one of the children, who was not yet school age, had elevated mercury levels. And there were several other children in the home. So this was a very challenging and difficult case, and it was written up in the White Lie series. And part of the reason they could do that is because the physician with poison control had written a peer-reviewed medical article about it, and so it became a publicly discussable case, and of course without anonymity. So with that, I will wrap up and pass it on to Regina. Thank you very much.
Got the mute off this time. Hi, I am Regina Small, and I am an environmental specialist here at MPCA working in compliance and enforcement. I'm going to give you a little overview of the agency's compliance and enforcement work. The MPCA compliance and enforcement programs monitor and assist the regulated community in complying with state regulations. Our goal is to help responsible parties achieve compliance. All compliance and enforcement programs at MPCA provide technical assistance. This includes educational fact sheets that are based on Minnesota statute, as well as provide guidance on topics such as disposal, compliance, and other requirements. We are open to all forms of communication with stakeholders, may it be in-person conversations, meetings, emails, and phone calls. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We're going to take some of the information that we get from this meeting and use it to improve upon our processes that we're currently using. Next up, the way compliance is determined is via inspections, record review, and testing. Specifically for skin lightening products, we focus on the sale, the offer for sale, or the distribution for sale per Minnesota statute. As John described just ahead of me here, we purchase products both in store and online, and then we attempt to find out how the products are getting into Minnesotan homes. MPCA C&E programs also respond to and investigate complaints. These complaints can come in anonymously, they can come in via email, an online submittal, or they can be referrals that we do receive from other agencies. So how compliance and enforcement looks for skin lightening products. We collaborate with the testing team with John and Michael. We determine what products to focus on or locations to focus on to find and purchase the products. We, of course, take into account budgeting and staff workload when we do this pre-inspection type of work. We go out and collect the product. We go in store, we go online. John talked a little bit about how that looks. You know, sometimes we get referrals for in-home ones and they show us the products that they use. In order to determine compliance, we test the products, we do internal screening with the Lumex, and then we send it offsite to a certified lab to get results. Next up, we evaluate the results that we receive. We discuss the results and discuss possible next steps. We bring these findings to our division directors, our managers, our supervisors, and we all collaborate together to determine where we're going to go forward with everything. So then we get to determining the enforcement path. Every single product that we purchase, every single investigation that we do is case specific. Each case is unique with factors that will affect the path forward. One path is compliance assistance. This is non-enforcement type of help. We're focusing on education. So we educate either it be the stakeholder, the responsible party, or the individual that has the product. Another path is enforcement. As a compliance and enforcement group at the agency, we forum every case that we come across. It's a group process, so it's not just one individual inspector going out and assigning penalties or fines or violations to somebody just on their own. Lower level compliance and enforcement is considered like our letters of warning and notice of violation. These letters all have corrective actions, but there's not a penalty that's monetary. Another tool we have are higher level enforcement for compliance. We have administrative penalty orders, stipulation agreements, court cases can all be concluded in that. Those are going to have corrective actions and they will have monetary penalties. We also have the Attorney General's office that we can refer cases to if necessary. So MPCA is looking for ways to improve communication with stakeholders. Going forward, we'll be developing culturally tailored educational materials from what we learned today and from what we get input provided back to us as well. Here today, next year at the next annual meeting as well. Your collaboration is key. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. Be sure to join our future annual meetings. And most of all, important of all, thank you for being here and contributing to this today. Next up, we're going to go to the panel. Maybe we're having technical difficulties.
I am having technical difficulties. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
My mouse quit working just as we were doing that. So thank you for that. I had to do some closing of some screens. So yeah, so we're moving into a panel. And really the purpose of the panel is to give everyone on the call a little bit of insight into what is happening in the business realm as far as products on the shelves. And that's to lead into another poll question that's going to follow. And what we hope to talk about as part of the Q&A is what is it that MPCA can be doing to do more outreach and connection in the business community. So with that, we're very excited to have 3 panelists with us who have a lot of experience in this area. So if we could go to the next slide, we have their bios. So first we have Amira Adawi. She is a global public and environmental health leader and a founder and executive director of the Beauty Well Project. And she advises the UN Environment Program on eliminating mercury in skin lightening products, serves as a senior advisor to Somalia's Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, is a former manager of the Minnesota Children's Cabinet, and holds an MPH from the University of Minnesota and a leadership certificate from Harvard Kennedy School. So welcome to Amira. Our next panelist is Jenny Lansing. Jenny is a senior environmental project manager with the Minneapolis Health Department. She has worked with this department for more than 13 years. She focuses on water quality, air quality, and pollution reduction initiatives. She holds a Master's of Science in Environmental Science from the University of Colorado and has experience working for the EPA as well as the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And our final panelist is Jamison Liu, who has more than 13 years of managerial experience at Mungtown Marketplace, where he oversees operations of more than 118 vendors. He has strengthened partnerships with state and local agencies, collaborated with the FDA to reduce unapproved pharmaceuticals, and supported the efforts to eliminate mercury containing skin lightening products. Lou holds a degree in business and public administration from the University of North Dakota and is also a licensed pilot. So with that, I think we'll jump right into the questions. And we'll start with questions that focus on the emerging trends and key lessons. And so I think I'll start with Amira. And I know that Beautywell has been involved with mercury in skin lightening products for a number of years. So would you tell us about your organization's journey and the direction your work is going in the future?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Andrea. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So Beautywell was founded 2017, and mainly because of to address the issue of colorism, skin lighting practices, and chemical exposures. So before I even explain about Beautywell, I just want to highlight that nobody will wake up one day and start to use skin lighting products that contain mercury and harm their health. The root causes of this is colorism, which is skin color discrimination that historically was introduced to communities of color, either globally or in the US. And so individuals were taught to dislike their skin color. And so that led to these harmful practices that people are using these products to fit into the society. And so Beautywell has been leading this issue for many years, and myself, I have been working on this issue for close to 16 years. Like John mentioned, I started this work when I was working for the county, and then when I saw the systems were not addressing this issue is when I found Beautywell. And when I say systems, I don't mean only the state systems, I mean the federal government systems like FDA, our congressional leaders not knowing about what this issue is. And so I had to find an advocacy organization and community education, community-based organization that focuses on in multiple approaches. And our work focuses on not only the advocacy and making sure that our policymakers understand this issue, but also how do we educate communities? How do we heal them? Since this is something that is psychologically impacting them. And then how do we make sure that like we study the trends of these products? In the last few years, we have established a database which has been really helping us to generate community-based data of testing these products and then sharing with communities. And these are products that they use and sometimes identify to us, and then we were able to buy them these products. We were able to influence global policies. Like John mentioned, Beautywell has been very involved in the Minamata Convention since 2019, which we were even able to secure funding through the chair for UN and WHO to work on this globally, which they have been piloting for 3 countries, and now in African countries, 14 countries that they will be doing. Beautywell also work focuses on youth initiatives. One of our most successful program is Young Women's Wellness and Leadership Initiative, which is we recruit young girls from high school and public schools, charter schools, to make sure that we build their self-esteem, their wellness, and so that we end the cycle of using these products. And so that also led us to create college ambassador programs. Now in several universities and colleges, we have ambassadors that go into campuses, educate people about this issue, and build in multi approach. And so coming next year, we will continue to do our education and outreach. We have been also working with ethnic media. We are going to develop our first documentary as of next year. In January, we will be documenting in the US. We will be documenting in East Africa, and then mid-year we will be going to Asia to document and generate this knowledge of impact in communities, but also the health problems, but also the industry that's benefiting from these countries. And so our work will still continue, and we will continue the work that we have been doing.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And I think a different perspective would come from Jamie. I know that Jameson, you've seen some positive trends in recent years. Can you tell us more about sort of the education? Those are the things that you had mentioned earlier that have been beneficial, some of the education that's been going on, and what you've seen coming in and out of the Moncton market, which is obviously where you spend a lot of your time.
Yes. Hi everyone, and thank you for having me. I apologize. I'm under the weather, so my voice is a little raspy. Nice to meet you, Amira. I've heard a lot about you, and finally get to put a face to all these years. I think we started on this project maybe prior to COVID, and heard your name kind of been tossed around, but I've never actually got to meet you. And I'd like to thank you for all the work that you've done in all these research and getting this off to the right track. So it's very nice to meet you, and hello everybody. I think again, thank you for having me. Some of the trends that we've seen here at the marketplace, the messaging, we've really focused on the messaging for the consumer and also from the vendor's perspective. And a lot of messaging that we used was not scare tactic, it was very factual based. A lot of people did not know the dangers of mercury. And so it was very nice to have these messaging prompts that said, hey, you can also pass mercury poisoning if you use these products to your unborn child or through breastfeeding. So those were very new to us, and we were very surprised, and that had a very good it resonated a lot with a lot of the consumers, and also for our vendors. Our vendors did not know of these dangers because they also use these products overseas. So when they got it and brought it to America, they didn't even think twice that it would be dangerous. Also, the messaging of love yourself and your own skin had very positive impact, especially in the teenage group. So that has helped with reducing a lot of the uses that we see here. Andrea, I think you might be muted.
Okay, great. If I could just stay unmuted, that'd be great. Thank you. So, as we talk about business challenges, as you know, in 2026, MPCA will have funds to use that was directed by legislature to put more focus on the business community. And we've talked about the challenges with local vendors and identifying products, testing products for mercury, assessing affordable disposal options, and dealing with the financial burden of losing inventory investments. There's just a lot to unpack here. So can we just start with the issues that you're seeing when it comes to identifying and testing products? And maybe starting with Amira and just kind of hearing from you, what are the challenges that your organization has identified?
So in terms of Andrea, I'm just gonna focus on your question. In terms of the product is so maybe let's talk about the trend. The trend that we're seeing is that, and this applies to whole beauty product, is especially on the skin lighting. It's like organic, natural products are like heavily in the market, and so that's how businesses are advertising to communities. And so all of the products now that we have tested, over like 60% of them were marketed as organic or natural. And they had the highest level of mercury. If you look at even our database, you will see. And so you have all of that going into communities talking to each other and saying it's a natural, it's organic, without even knowing what is natural and what's organic, what kind of chemicals can be considered natural or organic. And then the idea that secondary manufacturing is also what we're seeing. So let's say product expires, or they want to create a new product, and so they will mix multiple products, they will repackage and create label and then sell in the market. And so the new thing that we're seeing now, products that we used to buy, or even people used to buy for us to buy and test, the most expensive one used to be like maybe $25 but now some of the products we bought, one of them cost $250 actually for us to even buy as a sample and test, because there was a client who came to us and her whole face changed, and she said she used this product just 2 nights. And so we went to the store, and then she came to us because of the trust that she has with us. And then we went to the store. We asked, like, what type of product is this? Somebody used that, shared with us, and they said this is the most selling product that we have. And then we asked, like, how did you create it? And they're like, it's something that we created in Minnesota, actually in Minneapolis. And so that is also what we're seeing. And so the most challenging is that with the businesses that we work with, especially beauty salons that we work with, and also other businesses, is that they don't even know what mercury is. They don't even know other toxic chemicals that might contain in these products. And so the knowledge is not there. And so some of the even salons shared with me, actually one of the salons actually even 2 weeks ago met with me and said she's thinking about formulating her own skin lightening product. Do you think the state will license it and with the help of Beautywell? And I asked her, why? You have a successful salon, why do you want to move to this route? And she said, well, these products are selling more compared to people just coming to you and doing their hair. So I think it's very important that education goes into the businesses and make sure that they understand, but also following all of these trends, because that will also help with our work to be informed and know, when we're educating communities.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how about Jameson? How does this match with your experience with the Moncton marketplace?
A lot of a lot of vendors are not educated in what mercury is too. We kind of have to explain it to them. They didn't even know that it was in the product themselves, and that was actually the main ingredient and why your skin gets bleached. Um, so education is a big part of changing their mindset and letting them know what these harmful products are. Um, there's also one of the challenges for the businesses too is there's not really from a cost perspective, we can't have a Lumix here testing all the products that come through. You know, it was fun helping out MPCA, but that's a expensive machine. Um, but I think a lot of what would help the vendors a lot would be having a database that they can kind of refer to when they see, like, periodically when they see the products. Because I think we maybe 2 years ago, I think we had 2 products that MPCA came and tested. I think one of the staff had brought it back to test it, and it was high levels of mercury, but they weren't really at the time, they weren't really on the list that was in the website on the database, and they were clearly labeled. They had like English on there, they didn't think it would be tested for high levels of mercury, but they were high. So from a business standpoint, in terms of our resources, we don't really have that. So we're looking for MPCA to kind of create that database. One of the other challenges we had was the vendors. I think they said because their product works so well, they spent a lot of money on it, and they were kind of hesitant to give it up. So we had to re-educate them about the dangers and re-educate them about having these products on these shelves. And then so they finally turned it over to my office, and then we're able to dispose it properly at Bay West, which is the hazardous waste material collection site.
Okay, that's interesting. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, the cost of losing those products. And Jenny, do you have anything to add to this conversation? I know there's some things that we'll be talking about later, but just to hear your perspective would be helpful. The mute button got you.
Hear me now?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Yeah, so at the city of Minneapolis, we only worked in this space for a short amount of time. In 2019, we had received grant funding from the Minnesota Department of Health that had been approved by the state legislature. And so we started our work in 2019. It was delayed and also sort of modified when COVID started in 2020. So we were able to extend our grant period through 2022. But yeah, it was just a short period of time that we were really working in this space. As part of our grant funding, we did education and outreach, but we also had grant funding. We had $3,000 set aside as part of a buyback program, where we worked with vendors in the city of Minneapolis to buy back mercury containing products that they were selling. We worked in that space. We had a contractor working with us. I think she's actually on the call today listening. She did all the really boots on the ground work. We had another public health specialist and we had a communications team. That team visited stores in Minneapolis, looking for products, handing out some educational materials, talking with the store owners about some of the education pieces around mercury in skin lightening products. And then they talked to them about the program that we were offering with the buyback funds, and asked if they could schedule a time where they could come back. We used cash. They offered cash. We offered, at that time, it's incredible to hear how expensive some of these products are now. At the time, we were offering $20 per bottle or per container of product. And so then the staff went back. The vendors, estimated how much product they had. Some of the vendors asked for more time, because they said they had product in storage, they had product at home, and they wanted to make sure that they got rid of all of it. So they wanted additional time to get the product together. And then our staff came back to the stores, purchased back the products at $20 per container using cash. We also worked closely with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and Michael. Michael came out to meet at the vendor's location and do product testing with the Lumex, so that we could verify that we were actually purchasing back mercury containing product, and not something that was, otherwise still safe to sell. There was, this wasn't a regulatory action. There was some education, that selling this is illegal in the state of Minnesota, but very clear from the beginning that this wasn't going to be a regulatory action. Nobody was getting in trouble. We just wanted to help. And the vendors were all very receptive, wanting to get rid of this product. We're not aware that they were selling a product that was harmful to their community. We did have one vendor who was even hesitant to take the money. They just wanted to get the product off their shelves. They were so alarmed by it when they learned more about it.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And I think we've heard two key concepts right now. We've talked about the issues with disposal and the issues with cost. And I think let's focus first on the problems of, it's just not just identifying the products, but it's disposing of them. And that can be a challenge. So can all of you take some time to share what you're seeing as the biggest challenges to disposal?
So disposal, it's two ways. Those that are using how they can safely dispose, educating them, and then the businesses. But a lot of times what we see is that the businesses now, like as I mentioned earlier, even if the product is expired, they remanufacture, mix multiple, and then change the label. And then in general, they don't even understand how to safely dispose. Same with individuals who are using, in general, community members. And so with Beautywell, we always educate them how to safely dispose these products. especially the counties that they live, where to take. And then also we have been in communication with both counties, the largest counties, Ramsey and Hennepin, so that they understand when these individuals come to dispose these products, that they welcome them, because we get also information about certain times they close early, these sites, or certain times they question people when they're trying to dispose. And so we have been trying to make sure that access is easy for people. We also ask people to bring to our offices as they feel okay and as they trust. And so that's why sometimes we get products that we test, or when people go to our website and the database and they see certain product that somebody that they know or themselves use, they will call us and bring to us and say, this is the product that I'm using or somebody using. Can you test for me? I saw it on your website. Definitely it has mercury. But I just wanted to make sure, what do I do with it? And then we ask them to bring to us, or if they don't feel comfortable, we direct them to create. So disposal, it's an issue both on the community end, but also for the business.
Thank you for that. And are there solutions outside of Hennepin and Ramsey County?
Yes, so some greater Minnesota counties, we have been in communication, like Rochester, Moorhead. We have partnerships in Moorhead that we have been trying to share that information. Same with St. Cloud as well. But the largest disposal systems are based in Hennepin and Ramsey. And so I think that is maybe something MPCA can work on, that access is easier, especially in greater Minnesota.
Makes sense. And how about Jameson or Jenny? Do you have anything additional insight?
It's similar to what Amira was saying. Some people, when they want to get rid of their products after learning how dangerous it is, automatically they kind of go straight for the dumpsters, you know. And we kind of like the first time when we did the whole Lumix, when MPCA came and checked out the marketplace with just random testing. Um, when they found out that their product was dangerous, they said, okay, we'll get rid of it. We'll pack it up and throw it in a dumpster. But we had to kind of explain to them that the mercury, sticks on the ground, and it could also be a vapor. And so we have to do a lot of explaining, a lot of education on that. So we came up with a solution where our business will hold a small hazardous generated license for vendors. When they find out that they have mercury or pharmaceutical products, they can bring it to our office and we will take it to the hazardous waste material site. But it's kind of funny because all of a sudden we had all these products that were mercury in our offices, and they weren't bagged up in vapor bags or anything like that. So we're like, we gotta get rid of this fast. So yeah, we started. So it's those were some of the challenges that we had experienced.
So what's working today and what are the gaps to be addressed going forward in your perspective?
Me. Um,
All of you, anyone who has a
oh,
thought.
I can start. I get the educational piece, more outreach, to continue this I would say this campaign of getting mercury off of the shelves. Um, Even the new vendors that we have come in, like those who haven't gone through the training or haven't gone through this process, we haven't, or at least don't sell mercury, but we would like to direct them to a website where they can match it up, the database, and also um, educational materials. We used to have flyers that they post up at their shops to say, hey, think about this before you buy this. Why do you want to change your skin color? You're beautiful as you are right now. um and then so updated flyers would be nice to post around, and also facts, a lot of the facts for not using like scare tactics where like you take this and your arm will fall off or something like that, but facts like you could harm your potential baby if you're pregnant. And, and things about mercury that they don't know. It could be a vapor. It stays forever on the ground. Um, so the educational piece, we would really like to see more outreach to help continue the campaign, and also for vendors that come in who haven't gone through the process, they're also made aware of what challenges we've faced in the past, and we want to help address that.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Sure, yeah, I'll say same thing Jamie said. Of course, this issue, until we end the last person of using these products, there's still need for education, outreach for communities and businesses as well. But I just want also to emphasize on non-stigma related messaging. These are we're talking about humans here, and so to make sure that this issue it's a human-centered this issue it's a communities that heavily impacted by colorism, and so wearing that hat, I think, and not stigmatizing communities, whether it's a business, whether it's individuals or communities as a whole, I think it's a very important on this issue and addressing. And then as I mentioned earlier, making sure that like I will always repeat businesses, because the biggest barrier that we see in our work right now is that the lack of information or the lack of understanding in terms of businesses on this issue, and then continue to profit out of this. And it's not only ethnic-based businesses. We're talking about large businesses. These are the biggest beneficiaries of these issues, who are also connected to other countries and other global industries, and so making sure that it's a multifaceted of businesses and targeting. I don't want this target to be only ethnic-based businesses. This is bigger than them. They're not the biggest suppliers. We have other bigger suppliers that needs to be targeted. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to make sure, Jenny, you have an opportunity if there's anything that you're thinking that relates to this.
Yeah, I can just add on the disposal piece, just echoing the other panelists as well. The education piece was very important. So we were reaching out to sort of two different audiences. One was, just individuals and people not selling, but potentially aware of these products, maybe using these products. And so education for them on where to properly dispose of these products, if they have them in their home, if they see them in their home, through household hazardous waste and not just through your regular garbage stream. And then when we were working on the buyback program as part of the grant that we received, we had set aside some of the grant funding. It was about $1,800 to $2,000 for proper disposal. We weren't, as Jameson mentioned, we used Bay West as well. We were not able to, go through household hazardous waste because we had too much product. So we had to pay for the proper disposal of all of the products that we had collected. So I think, thinking ahead in the future, that's kind of an important aspect, is just having funding to pay for the proper disposal when these products are collected in bulk.
That's a good point. Yeah, and again, obviously more conversations come down to cost. So obviously there's a cost with trying to dispose of the materials or the products, but then again, let's do a little deeper dive into the conversation we've had about how when a small business and Amir, to your point, larger businesses, when you invest in your inventory, you're putting money out there expecting a return, and when you find out that those products have mercury, that there's been some challenges with trying to get people to either take those off the market. I believe some people had mentioned vendors wanting to at least keep them at home, but not sell them. And you've alluded to that in the past. Again, when I say alluded, I had conversations with each of the panelists ahead of time that there have been buyback programs that have been helpful. And so, and I guess, Jenny, let's start with you because you mentioned that the city of Minneapolis did have success with the buyback program. Now that has since phased out, but can you sort of share with us what the benefits were of the buyback program and what a difference that made to the small businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefits of it were twofold, because we had funding to do this buyback program. It gave us this opportunity to get into these businesses and do additional education and outreach, providing them with materials about racism, colorism, dangers of mercury, what products might contain mercury, and have those conversations. So that education piece was, a benefit as well. But then it was a positive interaction because for these business owners that, and this has been said, they've already put money into purchasing these products and they're anticipating, a revenue from the sale of these products, and all of the businesses that we happen to work with were very concerned about the health effects and did not want to be contributing to that. We didn't really have a lot of resistance, but at the same time, there is definitely, these are business owners. It was apparent that too, they're worried about loss of revenue, loss of money from having, made an investment in purchasing something that they're trying to resale. So there's that. It puts it into like a more low stress interaction when they know that they're going to receive financial compensation and they can do the right thing and it's not going to, affect their bottom line. And certainly we probably weren't purchasing most of those products back at the price that they could have sold them for, especially hearing Amira talk about some of the increased sales prices that these products are going for, but it definitely, it helped. It was an incentive. In the grand scheme of things, we reached probably, a small number of businesses. I think overall we worked with maybe close to 20 businesses in the city of Minneapolis. So that's just kind of a drop in the bucket, and it's just at the city of Minneapolis level as well.
And how about Amira? Do you have anything to add to that?
Mm-hmm.
The conversation about buyback programs?
Sure. I think the buyback program is good. Any incentive is good. However, we have to think about sustainability here. There is not enough funding for this issue. And so the minute that you give incentive and I remember some of the businesses actually that created also a problem of competition that we had to intervene and deal with businesses. But I think we have to think about the sustainability, and then also we have to teach these businesses an actual compliance. Okay, so so you're benefiting from this. Okay, so how do we move you to another alternative business? Okay, how do we make sure that we have been working with salons, and so we work with neighborhood development agency, economic development. So how do we make sure that salons get access to trainings, more different trainings, maybe green business trainings, and so they move into non-toxic hair products that will recognize their salons, non-toxic salons. So same thing goes to skin lighting. There's no alternative to skin lighting. So the whole skin lighting product has to end. So the businesses need to learn about the mercury exposure problem. If incentive is there for them, number one, the education itself, it's an incentive. Like them getting education, it's a huge incentive. If the state can provide other incentives for businesses, like Jamie also said, because these businesses, they're not the larger beneficiaries, and so So supporting them, the first part, buying out the product is all of that is good, but we have to think about the sustainability and teaching compliance, and then going back to the businesses. It's not only one time done deal. Going back to the businesses, okay, we give you this incentive. Did you stop selling? Because next month they will bring the same product again. So, every year, do we have to buy out these products from them? No, we need to teach them compliance and ending, the use of these products, but also the sale of these products.
That's a really good point. Definitely not a sustainable solution. And how about Jameson? Anything to add on before we move to the next question?
Yeah, like Amira said, it's not sustainable because by the time it got to us, I don't believe the buyback program was available to our vendors. I think you guys had used that up. So we had to again educate our vendors on the dangers of mercury and exposure to mercury in order for them to one of the vendors, because she was new, in order to kind of bring her products back and willingly give up her product for us to dispose properly. I think incentive does help a long way, and there's a way that we can kind of achieve that without buying their products. We could probably offer, I've been in some seminars where they kind of give me like a gift card to participate in a survey, and maybe the same can be done with a gift card as an incentive for the people to kind of go through the courses and whatnot, or just just so the vendors educate themselves a little bit more, as an incentive to really take a look at this in particular, this issue in particular, and really be part of it. So I think we can go about it that way, because there were a lot of products when we first when MPCA first came and we did the initial Lumix testing. This wasn't enforcement action. It was MPCA actually coming out to the community and saying, "Hey, we want to get a better idea on how big this issue is. Can we come to Mountain and test it?" And we say yes. And then we tested like hundreds of products. And just me imagining you folks trying to buy back some of those products, um, it's not sustainable.
Yep. I think that makes sense. And then we kind of saved the best for last. I think the fourth question that we're going to talk about comes down to education. Well, no, actually, second to the last question, education and outreach. And then we're going to go into opportunities. But I would say that with each of the one-on-one kind of conversations that I had with each of you, the need for education seemed to bubble up in all conversations. And please let me know if I'm wrong on that. But I think I just really like to have you share with the people that are on the call today, what difference does education make? And I would say, like, starting out, are there any specific outreach strategies that have been culturally responsive, that have been successful in your experience?
Sure, I can start. With our work, we use the model of building trust relationship with communities, and all of us, including myself, have lived experience of colorism and family members using these products. And so coming into educational session, forum, helping them understand that we have the same experience, same thing, that really helps people to even open up and share their experiences and lead to a behavioral change. And so whoever is working on this issue, I think they should let people with lived experience to lead this issue, using cultural brokers, people who are familiar with the culture, to work with these communities. And then the other things that has been very successful for us is that just listening to them. We don't force them to change their behaviors. We are there to share information with them. I have had people who said to me, "I've been using this for 30 years, nothing happened to me. Why will I listen to you?" To actually, after 2 years, calling me and telling me, the impact it had on their skin and their health. So always giving chance and being patient with them, and then most importantly, utilizing youth to lead this issue. Beautywell, we have been training youth. We have been partnering with youth to lead this issue, for them to become the voice, and not only to educate other youth, but overall to dismantle this whole social media that is disproportionately targeting to young women of color or young people of color to use these products, whether it's a TikTok, Instagram, or other spaces. And so empowering them so that they don't internalize these marketing towards them or in general, I think it's a very important, and it has been very successful for us. It has been also successful to get data, like sharing people firsthand exposure of human exposure, I think has been extremely helpful. And that's one of the things that I'm really grateful for the Department of Health to share with us and share with people that we serve, but also when we educate in our policymakers, not only the state, the federal, and globally as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'm thinking back to kind of layer onto what Amir is saying. Jameson, when we had talked, I hear what you're saying, Amir, about it's the youth and leading this process. And Jameson, you had 2 points that we had talked about. One was the idea or the importance of influencers. And again, I think there was this social media concept. So can you share a little bit about your thoughts on influencers? And then you mentioned this a while back, but there was also, I think, some good points that you had that about not using scare tactics. So using influencers, and kind of your thoughts on how scare tactics might have a completely opposite of effect of what we're trying to do.
Yep. So the first would be the influencers. For Moncton Marketplace, and now we also own Pan Asian Center out in Maplewood. We've seen from our marketing perspective, when we do marketing, influencers have a lot more there's a lot more effects with influencers in terms of your target market. They will listen to the influencer. The influencer now is a trusted source of information. So that's the power of the impact of influencers. So we need to reach out to the uh partner with influencers and get them kind of on board with the messaging. That will have a way better impact for the youth, in terms of using these products or being comfortable in their skin. The second thing that you had brought up, Andrea, what was the second thing that you had mentioned? The 2 points?
You talked about scare tactics. How about if we use scare tactics, it might
Yes.
have the opposite effect.
Yeah, the scare tactics, and I think either it was Jenny or Amira's point. People have used these products for a very long time, and scare tactics, they'll look at it, they're like, no, you're kind of lying to us. You're there's some kind of conspiracy going on. You probably want us to switch over to a different brand or something. So that doesn't really work. It does have an opposite effect. But if you have people who, if you have facts, and said that this will harm you, and give them all the information so they can make an informed decision, it goes a long way, rather than using scare tactics, and not necessarily a testimonial, but a person who actually ignored the facts, and then they ended up being really hurt or harmed by these products, is a better way than having scare tactics messaging. We also ran a festival prior to COVID, and I agree with Amira that youth is kind of like where we will go, kind of target in terms of helping spread the message. They, as long as they feel empowered to help with the community, they are kind of all for it. And when Michael, when he first started off at MPCA, uh, and Michelle from Minnesota Department of Health, they partnered with Monktown at a Monktown Festival to have a booth just for skin lightening cream. And I don't want to say that this topic is not it's an important topic, but it's not necessarily a a a uh uh what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know why I'm thinking the word sexy. It's not a sexy topic, you know, but we have to find a way to let people be aware of what's going on. And on Michael and Michelle's booth, they had fun kids games. You know, there's like a fishing game, and then there were snacks that the kids can win. And what that does is they pull the adults in with them to start a conversation, and they learned of all these facts about mercury skincare, mercury poisoning, that otherwise they would have just been like, "Oh, skin lightening. I've used these products. It's not really important," and they would walk past. But they had some things to draw them into the booth. So that's the experience that we had.
Thank you.
I
And I
can add
think,
to that. Oh, sorry, Andrea.
oh, no, you go ahead. I was just going to ask you if you want to use your response, and then I just was going to give you a moment to maybe reflect on what some of the gaps you've seen since your funding ran out, and now you haven't been doing as much as education, and so kind of, so go ahead.
Yeah, I can blend right into that. So I just want to add, for our education and outreach portion of our grant work, one of the things that we did as well, I heard a lot of talk about influencers. We did have a small amount of funding that we provided to a culturally appropriate influencer who did some work on some of her social media platforms about this. And then another aspect of the education and outreach that we did is we, at the beginning, working with some public health specialists at the city of Minneapolis, we did sort of a train the trainer model. Again, this was all happening right at the height of COVID, so everything was shifted to, online for the first time. But we worked with what was at the time the Minnesota Visiting Nurse Association. I think now it's Hennepin Healthcare. We worked with the City of Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board, and we worked with the Minneapolis School-Based Clinics. So those are nurses and public health specialists that work in the high schools in Minneapolis, and we did a train the trainer program where we offered online training for these people who might experience and come across this through their work. And that way they had the tools to use when they were speaking maybe with students at the school or through the visiting nurse program and again, that was a lot of that too was focused on youth and education to the youth population in Minneapolis, which we did receive some positive feedback about that. A few members, young people would come back maybe to like their school-based clinic nurse and talk about how they had a conversation with somebody at home, their mom or an aunt or somebody like that, and they're really excited about being able to talk about it. I'm so excited. I see Fatu in the chat. She did all the boots on the ground work for this, for our grant work. I was very behind the scenes managing the grant. Fatu did everything. And I'm happy that she made it on this call today. And hopefully maybe one of the future calls you guys can get Fatu on here to get her perspective. I can go right into that next question, or do you want me to pause there, Andrea?
No, it's up to you.
Yeah, okay. I don't know, did Amira or Jameson, did you have anything else on that topic before I move into then I think it's question number 4, Andrea? Okay, so yeah, then getting into that last question is just sort of the, the gaps that we've now seen since our funding, our work was really around grant funding. So this isn't a program that we have at the City of Minneapolis in our health department. We don't have staff that are focused on this. Probably the closest staff that we have are Lead and Healthy Home staff. They've actually been contacted, I know in one instance, to do a home visit for mercury, high mercury exposure. That was sort of a one-off instance, but this isn't an ongoing program for us at the city. And Amira mentioned this earlier, like, these problems with the sustainability of a buyback program. And that's exactly what I was thinking about after our program ended. We haven't been back to any of these businesses since then. So, we don't know if they're if they're still selling products, intentionally or unintentionally. We haven't had the opportunity to revisit, check in with these vendors, see if they, are keeping some of the education materials alive. So once that funding, once that grant funding was over at the city of Minneapolis, that's when our work ended. And so that made some of the work that we did, right? It was certainly not sustainable. It was a one-time thing. And some of the tracking, I would love to be able to, continue on that work and continue tracking and working with our businesses. I mean, the city of Minneapolis wants to be supportive of small businesses, and we want to have them in our city. But in this instance, all of our work in that realm ended when the funding ended.
Got it. And then the last question will go to Amira and Jameson. As you know, MPCA is wanting to do more with the business community in 2026 and beyond. Where do you see the biggest opportunities to build partnerships, do more education, do more outreach? Fill in the blanks on what you think is important.
As Bureau, we're always open to partner with MPCA on this work. And so that's one of the reasons that last session we advocated the agency to get funding to do this work. So we will continue to support your work and then partner with you on this. I mean, there's already, the agency knows Bureau well. As we know that there's already so many stores out there that sell these products, or there are a lot of suppliers within the state of Minnesota that are selling to these smaller vendors. And so we're happy to partner with you and to work with you on this issue and making sure that it becomes educational and then moving into compliance. And so we don't want, and I was part of when the agency first did rating many years ago, as John mentioned. And so that wasn't, it was successful in terms of taking the products off of the shelf, but it wasn't successful in terms of communities, businesses working with the agency. And so we want to make sure that this becomes a knowledge that they understand and learn, because all of these businesses don't even understand. So I'll give you also example. During last legislative session, when we were advocating for this legislation, we had some of the retail associates and grocery associates meet with the legislatures being against the bill that we had. And then when I met with them, they said, because we didn't even, and I explained to them why we're even doing this work, and they didn't even know that the stores that they represent or retailers that they represent sell such a toxic product is. And so making sure that you even reach out to these associations, retailers, associations, chamber of commerce of businesses, and so that it becomes a really educational wide for small businesses, but also larger entities, and then moving into compliance. I think it's the approach. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jameson, final thoughts.
Opportunities for MPCA to work with local businesses in terms of, and I agree, the educational piece is very important, and it has results. It shows results. Just going back to the festival, I think Michael and Michelle at the time got people to kind of verbally pledge they won't use these products. So that was pretty good. We had about 25,000 attendees that day, and I think they did about 300 people that responded positively to the messaging. So there are opportunities out there for outreach in our community events that we have planned out throughout the year. I think that's a good opportunity in terms of being able to educate. That would be the best bang for the buck, because all the people show up over there. I also agree with the approach MPCA took in the last one. I think Amira, when they did the raid, I think you guys, your community probably took the brunt of the raid, because when MPCA came to us, they had a more partnership approach rather than penalizing our vendors. Like, you guys are selling bad stuff, but they didn't know they were doing it. So I think maybe there was a change, because over here it was a little bit more it was more receptive than from what I'm hearing for the first time when you guys had the raid. So I think we can carry that on, view the vendors and as partners in terms of kind of solving this issue. That's more it's more receptive that way. um yeah, I think that's what I would see in terms of opportunity.
That's great. Thank you. And we have exactly 7 minutes left in the panel. So I thought that we could provide an opportunity for those of you in the audience to ask questions of our panelists, and then we could read those. And then also at the same time, we've asked some questions of these three, and they've graciously given us their time and their thoughts on what can help us in 2026. But this is also your opportunity for those not on the panel to tell us what resonated most with you, or if we asked you the question, what are our biggest opportunities for 2026? Can you put those in the chat as well? And I do see there's one question here, and it says, are there future grants for this issue? And I think I'm going to table that question to the MPCA Q&A section, which will be right after the panel. So maybe we'll give people just a minute or two to see if they have questions that they're going to pop in here. Yeah, thank you. So Sammy put in the question right in the chat too. So what is the biggest opportunity? Okay. Well, and maybe we just then open it to all questions. So if you have questions, again, if we could just get those in the chat, that would be great. And we can answer them in the order that they are received. I guess this is the time to be okay with silence, as sometimes people need some time to think through their questions.
Andrea, I can answer that first question about future grants for the issue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Currently at the PCA, we do not have any grants for this issue, but I do know that the Minnesota Department of Health did just finish up an RFP for a grant on this topic that they're doing, but that is closed now. But in terms of future grants, there is not any that I know of at this point. Would you say the same so as well, Kirk and Mira, that you know of as well?
Correct.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Well, I'll just, from the MPCA's perspective, there isn't anything else that I'm aware of. The funding from the legislature last year was to help with staff to do some of the suggestions you guys talked about, and so I think that's where the focus is. Although meetings like this is great to get some of that feedback from folks to see what might be able to be done, whether it's with existing funds or requests for future funds at the legislature.
Yeah, there's definitely needs for future funds. And so those of you that are asking that question, I want you to call your legislators, not only the state legislatures, your local city council members, city of Minneapolis, city of St. Paul, or all other cities, Hennepin County. It's not only the state legislatures that responsible to fund this kind of work, but also local level should advocate. Local health departments should advocate within their counties and cities for funding to fund their work, but also communities. And so it needs advocacy. Money don't just come without advocacy. And so those of you on the call, please advocate and advocate for more support with this issue.
And here's another question. Thanks so much for the enlightening discussions. I have a small question related to one of the previous presentations. In conducting market assessments to determine which suspected products to flag for sampling, did you have a specific criteria for products that were collected to test?
Yeah, I think that's a question for me. And so, so when we do go out there to test products, generally what I've done in the past was that because I'm not in compliance and enforcement, and I'm a product tester, I just go out and product test for new items. So new items that I have never seen before. But I think going forward, we will be reviewing almost a lot of the products because we do want to add in other elements, chemicals of concern, such as lead. Lead is something that I haven't seen. That the last round I did, that was the first time I did it with suggestion from Amira when she was talking to me, going, "Mike, have you tested for lead yet in these products?" And so when we did do the last round of testing that we haven't published out yet, we did have some lead levels that went a little bit higher, but not quite at this level where we could do enforcement on. But it was of concern that, you know what, everything that we've done in the past, we need to go back and review, just because they could also concern other chemicals of concern. We've tested them in the past for hydroquinones or other steroids, but not so much lead, which has always been a high concern for us here at the state. And so we will be going back and testing almost everything that we see, but I think that's what we'll be doing going forward. But in the past, we've been just kind of sampling new products that we have never seen before. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I think Amira has her own methods as well. I think she did mention briefly about hers. Didn't Amira? Did you want to chime in on how you select certain products for yourself as well?
Yeah, similarly, we just identify a product is like Michael said that we haven't seen, but also product is that we learn from communities, what's trending out there that moment, and then product is that reoccur. Sometimes we don't mind testing same products multiple times because of like the level of mercury change, but last product is that we tested it had lead, it had arsenic in one product or more. And so it's similar method that we use, but mostly trending product is.
Yeah, I also want to chime in that sometimes, like Amira mentioned, we do get people voluntarily giving us products to say, "Hey, can you test this out?" And another thing we do is that we do see products are always changing as well. They could have the same name, different labels, and different criteria. So that means, do we go back and check in case they changed their formulas or anything like that as well? And so we do see new labelings, new designs, sometimes new containers as well. And so that means we'll go back and retest them just to see if it makes any difference. And in case you're wondering, of all the ones that we have done and retest for new samples, they haven't changed the formula. So it's just the outside has looked different. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you. In response to the question, a couple other criteria are that there are certain keywords or buzzwords that are used on a lot of the products if they have label in English. So there's fair, shiny, brightening. There's different terms. Michael and I compiled a list that we've shared, and we could share that with people in Gov Delivery or otherwise if interested. Also, what we've seen is that a lot of the products seem to be made by, in certain countries and perhaps by certain limited number of manufacturers, and the box size, the container, specific type of container that's in the box, they're very similar. And so sometimes that's like, oh, we've seen this before, but this is a new product. We're going to get this one and test it because it looks so much like the others. So there are a lot of products made in Pakistan, and they have a particular appearance. So we after a while, you just like you kind of know you got to check this one. Another thing that's like sometimes there's like a pack of 3 or 4 products, would be a day cream, a night cream, of something or other. And we found that often the night cream has a high mercury content, but that's not a rule, but kind of a trend. And we figure that that's the one they have on the longest, the person using it. And so then it has an effect. But on the other hand, it also can contaminate the bedding and other towels and so forth that a person is using. And we have seen that in some of our home visits, the contamination in the bathroom or bedroom or in the laundry.
Kind of a last call. Are there any other questions? It looked like we came to our last one. And you maybe saw our last Slido come in. So if you look at the bottom where you can show the chat or you can show the Slido, we have one more question. Just curious to see if you're leaving with more information than you started with, if you're kind of leaving with the same amount of information, or if you still feel like there's room for more information to come your way, if you could answer that. And I think before we close out, I'll leave one more opportunity for the MPCA team to have any closing remarks. And I guess I should, before I do that, thank you to the panelists for taking your time today. It was very appreciated. And with that, I'll see if there's any other closing remarks from anyone else from MPCA.
Yeah, I'll take that opportunity. In many ways, we consider this kind of a gray market issue. It's not a legal product, and it comes in not necessarily through formal major retail channels. It's small amounts shipped in. It's people carrying it into the country when they're traveling, online sales of a small number of items. But if there are other channels involving sort of what I might call more legitimate actors or more well-known actors, we aren't always looking at those. So if some of those are an issue, please let us know as we move forward with this. Any of the sort of business or trade entities that you're aware of, then we can investigate that further. Thank you.
Yeah, I just also want to emphasize a point that, obviously this meeting was just to kind of a tipping point to present ourselves to people out there, whether it be state, local, or federal health, or people in the community, businesses or owners. But we're here to make our presence known, to kind of work and collaborate with everyone. And we're here to help each other out to kind of tackle this issue, and that we can't do this by ourselves and we need everyone's help. And so we are more than likely would like to reach out to you guys, or if you want to reach out to us as well, then let's work really hard to try to tackle this issue and eliminate skin lightening products.
I'll just add one last piece here is I know they're putting up some stuff on ways to stay connected with us, but one favor we ask of you, within this month, our goal is to put out a posting to grow the staff at MPCA doing this because of the legislative work that a number of folks did this year. And so when that comes out, we encourage you to help share those notices as we build out the team here to be able to do more of this work. And we'll let people know about those, but we appreciate any help you can do in recruiting people to work at the MPCA.
Right. Well, thank you. And with that, we can close out the meeting. And again, yes, please sign up for Gov Delivery updates so you can keep going with us on this journey. And thank you. Jamie, I see your message here as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.